Hey, what's up you guys? I am Dr. Shaw and I make videos following me through residency. Currently, I'm an intern in a rural family medicine residency program and I hope you enjoy my videos. So for today's video, it is a Q&A with my program director, Dr. Audy Whitman, and we are answering some of the most commonly asked questions when applying to residency. In particular, we have focused on our rural family medicine residency and what generally program directors look at when they're looking at your application. So hope that's interesting and stay tuned. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Whitman.
Hello.
Thank you so much for making time to be here today.
Happy to be here.
And he's the program director for the rural residency program at East Carolina University, and he's here to talk to us about a few things that he would be looking for in an application. And I know that's really important to a lot of people that have been applying this year, and that's something that I had a lot of questions too when I was applying.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll just get right into it.
Okay.
So here are some common questions. What do you look for in an applicant?
Well, the biggest thing we're looking for in an applicant is fit. We have a very benign culture here in our residency program. We actually have two residency programs. There's a standard program that's been around for almost 40 years, and then our brand new rural program, which Zeal is part of our inaugural class. But the resources are shared between those two programs, and we have a really benign culture in our standard program, and we've tried to emulate that in our rural program. I think we've been successful thus far.
No, it's successful.
And so making sure that we have an individual that's a good fit, that's going to be part of that benign culture, that's going to be a team player, that's going to really add to the fabric of our program. That's probably of utmost importance to us. We can train anyone to be a doctor, provided they make it through the filters for interviews. So making sure we just have the right fit, the secret sauce is the most important.
Okay. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the right fit? I know is it more like
Sure.
a gut thing? That
A lot of it is a gut
Okay.
feeling. Obviously, I'm not the only faculty member that will be interviewing applicants, but we go through a standard process in our applications where we filter out certain applications for board scores or for length of time outside of medical school, and then bonus points are given for other things like research, publications, things of that nature. And we all review the applications that make it through the filter and add comments on the application packets. And those application packets are reviewed by all of the faculty, and an applicant is either determined, yes, this is someone who I would like to give them the opportunity to make a case for why they would be a good fit for our program, or I don't think this applicant is going to be a good fit in our program, and we put them in what is called a dead on arrival pile. I know the term is rather macabre, but nonetheless, all of us have veto power on application packets. And then the individuals that make it through that process are the ones who are offered interviews. Most of us have been doing this for a very long time, so we have a general feel for looking at an applicant on paper and saying, okay, I think this person will be a good fit. And then when you actually have those interviews, granted, this is our second year doing virtual interviews, but in the past we do face-to-face interviews. Body language, how they interact with ourselves, with the staff members that they're going to meet who may not be physicians, all of that is taken into account when we reconvene at the end of interview season to determine how we make our rank list. And the thing that determines if you're on the top of the rank list or the bottom of the rank list is going to be a numerical score we assign to your packet, but more importantly, that fit, what the individuals who interviewed you think about you and how you would add to the culture and fabric of our program. That's going to be a very important factor.
That was very thorough. I think that was very, very helpful. It makes sense, like how it goes into it, and I think they answered like a good number of questions.
Sure.
So that's good. We can move on to the next one. So you mentioned that there's a filter based on board scores. Like, would you say that there's a filter already put in, or?
So there is a filter already put in. So as a program director, when I go into the ERAS, I can filter applications by length of time since you've graduated medical school, I can put in numerical score values greater than or equal to a set value for step 1, step 2. I can put in filtration for if you failed a step and how many times I would allow a step failure, and so on and so forth. And all of those things go into account. Granted, our program is a small program and a new program. Last year we had 100, 120 applicants for 4 seats. Being that we had only 100 to 120 applicants, even though I had the filters in place last year, I still went through each and every one of those applications by hand just to give individuals the benefit of the doubt. If we have numbers similar to that this year, I'd probably extend the same courtesy. But as a general rule, if you don't make it through those filters, you're probably not going to be offered an interview. I think we offered, out of those 100, 120, I think we offered about 70 interviews last year. And obviously we had 4 seats and we filled with top 10 picks. So we were very happy about that. So yeah.
Okay, that's really great. Okay, so that's good to know, like, how it all works. So when you're looking at it, how important is a personal statement for you?
So the personal statement is really the applicant's opportunity to present themselves and what drives them, what motivates them on paper, and present that to me. Obviously with virtual interviews, it's hard to get some of that body language, and in between interview sessions with people, it's hard to get a feel for applicants because you have this very regimented, 15 to 20 minute time slot that you're talking to a head in a box on your computer screen. So a lot of times what I'll rely on before I do the interview is I'll read through the application again, the personal statement, and I'll actually make notes to myself so that I have talking points to kind of get to your non-medical side, your non-academic side, to get a feel for who you are as a person and how you might fit into our program.
So would you say that's something that would make or break an application, or is just something that you would use to sort of get to know the person a little bit better?
I don't think it would make or break an application, but it certainly gives me those talking points to engage you during the interview process, and other faculty members to engage you during the interview process. So I think a well thought out personal statement that really and truly reflects who you are and why you want to become a family physician, I think is going to go a long way. Maybe telling me a little bit about yourself, your history, is going to go a long way in making that interview less awkward and sound more like a conversation rather than an inquisition.
Right, that's great. Okay, and so let's say if someone had a red flag, and would that be something that you would want them to address in the personal statement, or is it just more so you want to just get to know them and not necessarily whatever perhaps pitfalls that they may have had?
So red flags are kind of like an albatross around your neck, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're someone who has dedicated their undergraduate career, potentially even a graduate degree and then medical school, and you may have a step failure or you may have a class that you had to repeat, that is something that keeps coming up and coming up. You write it on your application. You're probably going to talk about it 20, 30, 40 times during interview season. And a lot of people, it is a point of contention. They're like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this dark spot in my life again. But as a program director and as a faculty member of a residency program, I would much rather you just put it out there in the open, say, hey, this happened, life happened, this is why it happened, these are the things that I did to address it to make sure this wouldn't happen again. And I'm going to ask you maybe 1 or 2 questions about it, and then I'm going to move on. And as long as there's a rationale as to why it happened and you've taken active steps to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again, I'm not really going to hold that against anyone. As I mentioned, life happens, and what I'm looking for is a fit, a cultural fit, and one of the things we're looking for are people who are adaptable, who can overcome adversity. And that would certainly be something that's reflective of an individual that can do just that.
So it might not be held against you, is what I'm hearing. So that's really great. We mentioned that you talked about this a little bit earlier about bonus points, but when it comes to research and publications, is that something that is viewed as, like you mentioned, a bonus, or is it something that, is there a certain number that you would want to have, like, sort of as a requirement?
There is no requirement for me to offer you an interview with research and publications, but it certainly does add to the quality of your application. So if you've presented posters, if you've had peer-reviewed material that has been published, and I'm looking at 2 applications where the board scores are the exact same, length of time out of med school is the exact same, everything else is the exact same, obviously the benefit is going to go to the person who has those publications. So if you have them, I would encourage you to put them on your application, but by no means is that a thing that's going to break your application if you don't have research experience. As Zeal can attest to, part of the curriculum that we have is we expect during your residency, your 3 years of residency, you're going to participate in scholarly activities, which include things like QI or PI projects on your clinical modules. And we have a research division. We're part of a large academic medical center, one of the largest hospitals in the country. And we actually have a pretty robust research division that has multiple research projects ongoing, many of which are at our rural sites.
Yeah,
so if you want to latch on to one of those or add on to one of those, we're more than happy to accommodate.
Yeah, it's definitely, they're very helpful. Like I was talking to Dr. Cumming about it, and like if you're interested in research, there's a lot of support. So if there's someone with a gap year and they're trying to decide between doing research versus an additional set of like clinical experiences, for our rural track, which would be more advantageous, would you say?
So for our rural track, I would say that additional clinical exposure is probably going to be more advantageous. Obviously, if anything you do that's medically related, be it clinical or research, is going to be looked upon favorably, but if you're comparing those 2 things side by side, a person who still has active clinical experience during that gap year is going to have the edge to someone who may have been in a research lab looking at an enzyme, some metabolic pathway. And the thought process behind that, the rationale is you're going to be primarily a clinician when you come here and you're doing your residency training, and making sure that you keep those skill sets active, that you are continuing to hone those skill sets is really important to us, because that is a resident who is going to really hit the ground running rather than a resident that we have to invest a lot of time and resources in catching them back up to where their peers are.
Right. And just on that note, like, what about step 3? Between those 3, would you say that it makes any difference? Because there's some people who may have taken step 3, some people who may not have. If someone was trying to choose, what would you?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think it depends on the applicant. So if you have an application where you've had let's say you failed step 1 and then you had a really low score on step 2, but you made it through the filter, demonstrating to me that you have, really mastered the standardized test and you're not going to be a risk for failing step 3 by having that step 3 score already in hand, that's going to put my mind at a lot more ease, saying, okay, well, maybe this is a person who can pass their boards, and I may look more favorably upon that application in ranking them higher than someone who I still have a question mark about. However, that being said, if you're somebody who had a really decent step 1, step 2 score, no failures or anything, keeping those clinical skills active would probably be more important than the step 3 test, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, because then I know that a big factor is like our board scores, like once we graduate residency, and that's a lot of times how programs are evaluated.
Yeah, so the ACGME is the accrediting body for all residency programs here in the United States. And the ACGME, one of the things they look at when we go to apply for our recertification of our accreditation is they look at our pass rate on our boards for our graduates. And they expect us to have a certain proficiency in pass rate. So that is highly important to me, because as the program director, number 1, I don't want to see my program fail. I don't want to see my program lose its certification status. But I also have responsibility for all of the residents that go through my program, and I want to make sure that they have a piece of paper on their wall from a program that is still actively accredited and held in high esteem. So that is my long-term goal, is to make sure that I train them to be good clinicians and that I keep the program in good standing so that their training is never called into question.
That's really good to elaborate. I think that's really important for people to know, because a lot of times what happens is they don't always know that a program's like accreditation and the reason it's open is because they demonstrate that they have taught their residents well by virtue of the board scores. So that's why these USMLE board scores really matter just to program directors, not because they're like, oh, you have to do really well on standardized exams. It's because they need the program to stay open.
Absolutely. And as an aside to that, obviously we're a new program. None of our applicants have taken boards yet, but I mentioned earlier we are a sister program to a very well-established standard program that we share a lot of resources with. And one of the resources that we share are our didactics on Thursday afternoons. And the didactics are broad-ranging. Sometimes we have face-to-face, hands-on skills labs. Oftentimes we'll have lectures based on topics in cardiology, gynecology, behavioral health, whatever. You're a family doc, it's a little bit of everything. And then part of that is board preparation as well. And I will tell you that we're sharing the same resources, so I anticipate the same outcome with my rural program. But we have like a 98% pass rate over the past 8 years on our board score, which is some of the best in the country.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the next question would be, is this program IMG friendly, or do I have to be from an American school from Eastern North Carolina?
You do not have to be from Eastern North Carolina. You do not have to be an American medical graduate. We are very IMG friendly. In fact, our entire first year class in the rural program are all IMGs. 2 of them are North Carolina natives, 2 of them are not. But we don't hold either of those things against anyone. Medical school's hard, regardless of where you go. If you're at, St. George's down in the Caribbean, or if you're at Harvard Medical School up in Massachusetts, it doesn't really matter. You're learning the same stuff. You're learning the same anatomy. You're learning the same micro. You're learning the same farm and path. What I'm concerned about is, are you a competent enough person that I can train to become a physician? Are you a competent enough person where I can say with reasonable certainty that you can pass your boards so that I can keep this program up and running and in good standing? And are you the right fit culturally to keep the benign culture that we currently have in our program? Because that is of utmost importance to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So speaking about the benign culture of this program, because the interviews are virtual, how can an applicant figure out what our culture is like?
Well, we're doing a little different approach this year. Last year, our program, along with every other program in the country, was really scrambling to figure out how to do virtual interviews and do them well. And it was a steep learning curve, but we learned a lot of lessons in the process. And one of the things that we came to find out when we evaluated our process at the end of the year last year is traditionally, what we have done with our interviews when they were face-to-face is the night before the interview, the residency applicants would go out to dinner with our current residents in our program, where we would get a feel for those applicants outside of the workplace setting, outside of the medical setting, and really get a picture, a snapshot of what they are like as just human beings, as individuals. And then we would have the interview day the next day, which looks more through the application, the formal process. But both of those things really weighed in on how we ranked applicants at the end of the year. Our program, like many other programs in the country, once we are done with interviews, we meet as a group, which includes residents who have interviewed applicants, as well as the faculty that have interviewed applicants. And we will literally pull a packet up and say, okay, this is the residency applicant that applied on this date and interviewed on this date. These were their scores, etc. We have an arbitrary scoring system we use. These are how many points they had based on their interview scores. And then the entire group talks about that applicant, and people who interviewed them say, okay, I really like this about the applicant. This thing was a big question mark with me about the applicant. And that can weigh on how you move up or down on the rank list that I put in and finalize in the spring. To that end, what we have decided to do this year, because we didn't have that hands-off dinner type thing last year, is we're actually having interview time this year with our residency program applicants the day before, so that we can kind of get an unofficial feel for those applicants prior to the formal interview process. And our hope is we get a better picture or snapshot of those applicants as a result.
Yeah, so that's actually better, because I remember when I was looking for more information about the culture of the program, I remember I looked on like LinkedIn, YouTube,
Sure.
like Instagram, everything. And ECU FemMed, the main program and the rural program, both have Instagram accounts. And like we've been trying to do things more electronically, like right now, virtual. So hopefully people can get an idea of what the culture's like and how supportive everyone is. So yeah, though that's another way too. I remember I messaged him on LinkedIn, Dr. Whitman. I'm like, really interested. And then not just like don't spam program directors, but actually ask like thought-provoking questions that you genuinely have that you can't find online.
You did, and we had several phone conversations
Yes.
as well, before and after the interview.
Had a lot of questions.
But that was totally fine. I was happy to talk to you and address any issues or questions that you had about it.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what happened to that video. I'm not sure why it got cut off, but I hope we answered all the questions that you may have had, or at least some of them. If there are some burning questions that we have not gotten around to, please feel free to reach out to me on my social media, on my Instagram, Twitter, whatever, or you could just comment down below and we'll get to them. All right, see you in the next one.